Hello, this is Pastor Manning bringing you the Beacon of Hope podcast from Lighthouse Baptist Church at 2032 Cedar Hill Road. I'm happy to bring you the second episode in our series regarding Esther, entitled Such a Time as This. Episode 1, published on the 17th, it is episode number 158. If you've already listened to that episode and have started in on this series, you may want to go back and re-listen. I took down the original recording and put in a new one, just slightly shorter. I wasn't fully pleased with what I'd covered and the quality of that first recording. So if you go back to episode number 158 in our podcast, you'll get the republished first episode of this, the introduction to Esther. Well, today we are beginning in Esther chapter 1 and verse 10. By way of review, let me say to you, we learned in our first episode about the king. His name is Ahasuerus, and his name in the secular world was called Xerxes. He's known by that. Very powerful king, very tall king, almost 8 feet tall, pretty amazing. The city and the palace from which he ruled was Shushan. Shushan, the city area itself, covered about 4,940 acres. And the palace area that's referred to in Esther chapter 1 covered an area of 123 acres. This kingdom, over which he ruled with 127 provinces, took in an area of 2,100,000 square miles. At its height, Ahasuerus' kingdom had an expeditionary force, a military force, that could have sent out 2 million men and was equipped with 4,000 ships. Whenever we left off reading the last time, we were coming to the end of a 180-day festival where the king had shown off the opulence, the wealth, and the wisdom of his kingdom and had made a big deal of this. And the last verse we had read said that Vashti the Queen had also been entertaining women in her palace. We're going to begin today in verse 10. It says, on the seventh day, when the heart of the king was merry with wine. Let me just say here, you're going to see wine's insidious effect. It says in Proverbs chapter 31, verses 4 and 5, it is not for kings, O Lemuel, it is not for kings to drink wine, nor for princes strong drink, lest they drink and forget the law and pervert the judgment of any of the afflicted. I wonder how many bad decisions have been made because of the influence of alcoholic beverage. Here you will see that the king's heart's made merry with wine. He may not be drunken, but he's a little tipsy. He's not exactly himself, and pride's in this thing, and wine's in this thing. What a deadly combination that is. Let's see what happens here with this. And it was merry with wine. He commanded Mehuman, Biztha, Harbone, Bigtha, and Abitha, Zethar, and Carcassa, the 7 chamberlains that served in the presence of Ahasuerus the king, to bring Vashti the queen before the king with the crown royal, to show the people and the princess her beauty, for she was fair to look on. So if you can imagine this, he's been drinking. The other men there with him been drinking. He's showing them his kingdom, and he says, now I'm really going to show you something. And he wants to bring Vashti and parade her in front of these men. But the queen Vashti refused to come at the king's commandment by his chamberlains. Therefore was the king very wroth, and his anger burned in him. Then the king said to the wise men, which knew the times, for so was the king's manner towards all that knew law and judgment. This here in verse 13 establishes that Ahasuerus' pattern and his habit was to depend upon counsel. He seemed to depend heavily upon it. That's not unreasonable, especially ruling such a large and diverse kingdom. But later on, an evil man named Haman, which we will learn about in our next episode, will exploit that tendency for deadly purposes. Verse 14 says, And next unto him was Karshim, Shether, Admatha, Tarshish, Meres, Marsana, Memucan, the 7 princes of Persia and Media, which saw the king's face and which sat the first in his kingdom. So here he has his chamberlains, those who care for him personally, his personal valets. And here he has his 7 top rulers over his kingdom there. They've all heard Vashti refuse him, not allowing him to come. Or now it said that she wouldn't come, rather, when she was bidden. Then he asked these people, here's what he says in verse 15, what shall we do unto Queen Vashti, listen to the phrase, according to law, because she hath not performed the commandment of the king Ahasuerus by the chamberlains. And Memucan answered before the king and the princes, Vashti the queen hath not done wrong to the king only, but also to all the princes and to all the people that are in the provinces of the king Ahasuerus. For this deed of the queen shall come abroad unto all women, so that they shall despise their husbands in their eyes, and it shall be reported, when it shall be reported, rather, the king Ahasuerus commanded Vashti the queen to be brought in before him, but she came not. Likewise shall the ladies of Persia and Media say this day unto all the king's princes, which have heard of the deed of the queen, thus shall there arise too much contempt and wrath. In other words, he and those with him say, if you let her get away with this, we're not going to be able to control our women. Boy, what strange thinking and what strange events, huh? If it please the king, let there go a royal commandment from him, and let it be written among the laws of the Persians and the Medes, that it be not altered. Let me say here to you, we saw in verse 13, it says, the king said to the wise men which knew the times, for so was the king's manner towards all that knew law and judgment. And then verse 15, they said, let's find something to do to the queen according to the law. And by the way, they're going to write a new law so that they can be lawful and yet do what they want to do. That's a familiar theme, isn't it? And that's what they were going to do. And then the phrase is said in verse 19 about the laws of the Persians and the Medes, that it be not altered. The Medo-Persian Empire was run by laws that once they were enacted, once they were put in place properly according to their government, then those laws could not be changed by anybody, including the king. This is exactly what Darius ran into whenever the princes under him played off of his pride and had him pass a law which ended up condemning Daniel to the lion's den, and then the king couldn't reverse it because it had already passed into law. But let's continue. I'll begin again verse 19. It says, if it please the king, let there go a royal commandment from him, and let it be written among the laws of the Persians and the Medes, that it be not altered, that Vashti come no more before King Ahasuerus, and let the king give her royal estate unto another that is better than she. Basically, she'll be in exile. And when the king's decree, which he shall make, shall be published throughout all the empire, for it is great, all the wives shall give to their husbands honor, both to great and small. And the saying pleased the king and the princes. And the king did according to the word of Memucan. For he sent letters to all the king's provinces, and to every province according to the writing thereof, and to every people after their language, that every man should bear rule in his own house, and that it should be published according to the language of every people. And so this first time in Esther, in the book of Esther, we see a proclamation going out to these 127 provinces, which take in a variety of people and a variety of languages. And what they wanted to let people know was the king commanded Vashti. Vashti said no. And when she did, she lost everything. She lost her royal estate. She was not allowed to come before the king. She was basically put in exile at that point. Now, our next episode is going to be entitled Meeting the People. It's set to publish on Saturday, November 21st at 7 a.m., and the main people that are involved in the book of Esther, except for Ahasuerus, who we've already met, but the main people who are in the book of Esther, including Esther herself, will be introduced. To be prepared for our next episode in this series, please read Esther chapter 2, verses 1 through 11. May God bless you and have a great day.